Nikki Fretwell is here at the Nottingham University NHS Trust after being invited by the Pathology team. Nikki received the diagnosis of FSGS after she started to notice her body swelling up and feeling extremely tired. FSGS, or Focal Segmental Glomerulosclerosis, is a condition that causes damage to the glomeruli, which are tiny filters in the kidney. The damage causes scarring to the filters, which then stop working. This then allows protein to leak through the walls of glomeruli into the urine. It can affect both children and adults. Nicola wanted to share her experience.
I was 17 and I'd been going to and from the doctors because I was swelling up from my ankles. My whole body was swelling up. I was extremely tired. I quit sixth form because I couldn't get up in the morning, actually. And they told me it was my age. Of course, there was no internet. I couldn't Google anything in those days, and you take what you're told at face value. But it did get to a point where I saw a GP. He weighed me, gave me a mild diuretic, told me to go back in 2 days, and I'd gained half a stone in fluid, and put on a ward and given, again, a mild diuretic and a fluid balance sheet. So everything I drank, I had to write down, and everything I passed that to measure my urine. And after a week, the consultant came, said I was lying. I must have been drinking more than I was writing down, and wanted to discharge me. And I got ready to leave, and I collapsed in the middle of the ward. So I was transferred to Nottingham City, and it took a little while and a biopsy to determine FSGS.
Nicola is one of the longest surviving dialysis patients, and the first dialysis patient to get pregnant and have a baby.
Dialysis patients, generally speaking, don't get pregnant. Very often they have no menstrual cycle, and even if they do, their bodies are just not able to sustain any pregnancy. They've got a creatinine of over 300. I had to have ultrasound scans fortnightly to make sure, obviously, that the fetus was growing normally. I was very poorly throughout. I had renal vein thrombosis before I got pregnant, and then it was suspected a second time during the pregnancy. So my son was born via elective caesarean at 7 months, and he weighed just under 2 pounds. But nobody had ever done that before. I was told because I was young I might need a transplant, and I went on the transplant list at 17. And at the time it was like, well, I'll need a transplant. It was not something I was expecting. I was never told I would need dialysis, because I think there was always a hope that the condition would improve, but it was completely unmanageable. And after about a year, I'd heard about dialysis. I knew that it removed fluid, and oedema was my biggest issue. I was carrying around 30 litres of fluid around at any given time, and it was just uncontrollable. And I actually asked if I could start dialysis, to which my consultant said, yes, you'll probably be better. So I still had around 20% kidney function then. There was no such thing as stages of kidney disease at that time. It wasn't called CKD. There were lots of buzzwords now that didn't exist then. I wanted to do something that controlled my fluid, and so I would feel better at the age of 19.
Patients with FSGS can have high levels of fluid retention that cause puffiness, known as oedema, around the eyes, abdomen, feet and legs. Many experience weight gain, and urine can also look foamy. If kidney failure is already well advanced, symptoms could include tiredness, lack of energy, itching and muscle cramps. Patients are referred to a nephrologist to receive treatment. Treatments could include active supportive care, also known as conservative care, a form of dialysis or a kidney transplant. They may also give drugs to try to slow down loss of kidney function.
The very first dialysis I had over 30 litres of fluid on board, and this fluid, we hadn't been able to remove it. And on the very first dialysis, they put a little tube in the front of the machine, and I watched that fluid come out into a jug. And as soon as I saw that, I was happy with dialysis. I felt better, and that was the bottom line. I needed to feel better. I had a son who needed me. Dialysis has never been a problem. For me, it's always been something I do, but it doesn't define who I am.
Nicola, after starting her treatment, took steps to do her dialysis at home. Nocturnal home dialysis is her preferred method. It enables the patient to receive it at night while asleep. The benefits of nocturnal dialysis are taking less medication to control blood pressure and anemia, taking less medication to keep phosphorus under control to help bone disease, improvements in neuropathy and less restless leg syndrome, feeling better during dialysis and less washed out, having more energy for daily tasks, sleep better, have fewer and shorter hospital stays, live longer.
Home dialysis, particularly nocturnal, doing it through the night, enabled me to work full time. It enabled me to do all my hobbies, do the radio, playing the brass band, that sort of, all the mad things. I set myself a challenge to do something different every month. Hospital dialysis is 3 times a week, every week, forever, or until you get a transplant. And there's no time off. There's no time off at Christmas. You still have to do 3 times a week. They'll just shift it from Christmas Day, perhaps to Boxing Day. You still have to dialyse on holiday, whether you're in this country, whether you go abroad. There is no escape. So having that freedom to do it at home in some respects is brilliant. However, I haven't had a holiday for 10 years because I cannot dialyse the 30 hours a week on holiday that I do at home.
Nicola takes regular blood tests every month. To do this, she uses 2 purple bottles, which are primarily used for blood counts, 2 gold bottles, which are used for biochemistry tests, including kidney function, and every 2 months takes an MRSA swab. She does this pre and post dialysis. Post dialysis, Nicola waits an hour before she can take a blood test. Once blood tests are completed, the dialysis nurse will visit Nicola at home to collect them, and they will be sent onto the labs for testing to determine Nicola's overall health.
So my blood tests determine almost every aspect of my treatment. If I have high CRP, or if I've any inflammation, any sign of infection, it will be flagged up straight away in my bloods. I rely really heavily on them, particularly if something isn't normal or something doesn't feel right, or if I don't feel well. I trust my own instincts 100% because I've lived with this for a very long time, so I know if something doesn't feel right. Pre-COVID, my home therapy nurse used to come at night and collect my pre-bloods, and then she'd come again in the morning and collect my post-bloods. Since COVID, a lot's changed, so now she only comes in the morning to collect pre and post-bloods.
Bloods are usually taken and turned around within 24 hours, but can take up to 2 days if there is something specific being tested. Urgent tests are done in a timely manner. Every effort is made not to have a delay due to it impacting the overall test result. Potassium tested in blood can give an inaccurate result if the test is delayed. High levels of potassium can cause serious heart problems.
I'm always concerned about things like potassium because I know that delay, or at least I've been told that delay from the blood being taken to reaching the lab can have an impact on results like potassium. So that only concerns me in the sense that I know of the risks of high potassium. There has never been any delays with my bloods. If my bloods are sent, used to be called P1 as an urgent, I would probably get those results back within an hour. But I do know of other pathology units where their staff have very little understanding of dialysis patients and why they need their bloods urgently, or the impact of what those blood results might mean.
Nicola's experience when gaining information when she was first diagnosed was very vague. Learning about the treatment and its complications could only be found with a handful of medical professionals.
I have an excellent relationship with my consultant, but unfortunately there is a trend of people, that nurses included as well as doctors, that think if your kidneys don't work, your brains don't work. It's dismissive and it's rude and it's largely inaccurate. Kidney patients had jobs, kidney patients had lives, kidney patients had careers.
Despite being on dialysis, Nicola maintains a full and active life, turning her hand to a multitude of experiences including motorcycle riding, driving a steam train, and even flying in a helicopter with her son Daniel.
I decided when I had my son I needed to live as normal a life as possible for him, and sheer determination actually, because I always had this idea that if I stopped I wouldn't start again, and so I worked hard. I took on extra jobs, I did private tuition, I had various hobbies. I think I was trying to prove to everybody that I wasn't a dialysis patient, but really I think I was only trying to prove it to myself. And in the end I had a breakdown. So I ended up retiring from work because I so desperately wanted to be normal, having been in from the age of 17 when your friends are having careers and partying and they've got good jobs, and all that was taken away from me. So being able to dialyse almost gave me some of that back, and I wasn't going to let it go easily.
Over the years, Nicola has been involved in a number of drug trials, which also gave her the opportunity to start talking about her experiences.
Obviously I've been on various drug trials over the years, but it was only after I had the breakdown and then I left work, up until that point I'd never accepted I was a kidney patient, not really, even though I dialysed and took that seriously. So that it was after that that I started talking at renal conferences and webinars about supporting psychosocial support for kidney patients. There are lots of programmes now, lots of projects run by Kidney Care UK to promote the knowledge about healthy kidneys, keeping your kidneys healthy, because I would not wish dialysis on anybody, even though it's kept me alive. But I would like people to understand the only reason why I'm here is because I'm being kept alive by a machine. I cannot blame them for not understanding that kidney patients actually are quite poorly. I can't change that, but it doesn't mean I have to become a victim to being on dialysis. But I can't change other people's misconceptions. I'll be doing it my whole life. I think the approach that I've always had, which is learn everything you can and ask everything you can, has stood me in good stead. So I wouldn't change that, because I think it's kept me where I am today. I think healthcare professionals need to understand if you're a patient on dialysis who's been on dialysis for a length of time, the chances are you know more about your condition than they do. And I think kidney patients in general deserve some respect for their knowledge and shouldn't be dismissed if they think something is wrong.
Nicola and her son have both shared their experiences by writing articles for CKD Explained, where Nicola is part of the patient expert team. Nicola's son wrote his article last year on what it is like to have a parent on dialysis. The full articles written by Nicola and her son Daniel can be found at www.ckdexplained.co.uk/tag/dialysis.
My son actually wrote an article of what it was like to see his views as a child and his views as an adult, and certainly as a child he didn't know any different. You know, he knew that he was special because it was in the news, but to him I was just his mum anyway. He knew no different. At hospital for dialysis, he knew sometimes I was ill, sometimes I was tired. I think as an adult he asks more questions and he understands a lot more about the long-term implications for me. Obviously, you know, I don't know how long I have left now, so we try and make memories, really, because you just never know what's around the corner.